Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I sent you the clip of Brady throwing that slant.
Well, okay, that was a cut.
He doesn't like it when I bring up Brady. Hello, everybody, and welcome into a video edition. We're back on video. I might need to move or something. I don't know. All right. Anyways, we got the solo. This is great. This is back to our roots. And not only do we have video, but we got, they changed the camera angles. They can put us in a 2-box. There we go. There's the 2-box. This is
Look at that.
Next level video. I'm excited. Like I said, Evan Lazar alongside me as always, Alex Barth. And we got a little bit to unpack here today. But as I normally do, I always start with like a 20-minute soliloquy that I've been thinking about for the last week since we were on the air last Thursday. Or was it Wednesday? I don't even remember. Anyways, and this one has to do, I think, more so with what I'm seeing on social media, the callers that we're having call in as well. But mostly I'm going to be personal about it and say that it's really my social media that I'm seeing this on, all right? And it's starting to drive me up an absolute wall, okay? And I sent you last night, I was trying to look for the words to perfectly explain how I feel.
And I think I'm scrambling to pull up the tweet that I think you're going to...
Robert Mays from The Athletic, who I love, he had the perfect synopsis of what we're going through right now in New England at the quarterback position with Mac Jones. And that is that we now live in a black and white quarterback situation where it's either you stink or you're elite. And there's no middle ground. And I think what's more important about the no middle ground is that there's no nuance to the conversation. Right. It's all just yes or no. Did you complete the pass or not? Did you produce or did you not produce? And there's no conversation about the details, about the nuance of how we got here. And I think the biggest thing with Mac Jones, and I don't know if Mac Jones is good or not. I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy or the franchise quarterback or whatever, term you want to use. What I do know is that if you've decided based off of this season that Mac Jones is not the guy, you don't know football. You don't know football. You're a moron. Sorry. You're dumb. Because you can't decide that based off of this. You just can't. You can't properly evaluate that position with the absolute dumpster fire that they have put him in. And let me
build on that real quick. I don't want to cut off your momentum, but honestly, if it was just this season, and I've heard people say this, if it was just this season, maybe there's a little bit of an argument. But we're just throwing last year out.
Right.
When he took them to the playoffs as a rookie, and could he have played better? Sure, but I don't think people realize how hard that is to do. So I don't want to cut your rant off, but one, I wanted to say there's a lot of familiar names in the chat on YouTube, which is awesome.
Love that.
And two, I just love that tweet so much about either you're elite or you suck. And I think the era that we grew up in that has kind of ended at this point, right? And when I say we grew up, I mean when we were in like middle school, right? You have Brady, Manning, Breeze, Flacco, not Flacco, but like Rivers. You had Big Ben, yeah. Like that's not normal.
Yeah.
I think people just assume that you're going to be able to get an elite quarterback when in reality, there's 3 or 4 of those guys at most
90%
in the
of
league at one time.
Is the mid-cap crowd. 90% of the league.
Right.
And then 10% is elite.
That era from like 2005 to 2015 will never be replicated again in terms of the quarterback talent around the league. It's not coming back. That's not the norm. And Evan, this goes to a take I have that we've talked about a lot on this show.
Yeah.
The time it will take you to find that elite quarterback is simply not worth it. It's not unless you are picking at the very top of the draft and there is a no-duh guy there.
Yeah, like Trevor Lawrence or something.
As opposed to...
And even look at him.
There's 52 other players on the roster, finding 52 other really good players, and then a quarterback that just won't screw it up. But a quarterback who just won't screw it up, which there are teams in the league that have pined for that guy for decades, is now considered a bum.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowingly dumb, like you said off the top.
Right. So I want to keep hammering home the point that this is not a Mac Jones is actually secretly elite. rant, right? Like, this is not that. This is, I don't know how everybody's ready. Not everybody. I don't know how so many people are ready to just pronounce his career dead off of playing quarterback with Matt Patricia calling your plays.
Right. This isn't just, sophomore slump. No, This is an unprecedented situation. The regression here is not, this isn't just, it's the second year and defense has figured him out and they're giving him new looks. That's not what this looks like.
That might have been down the stretch last year.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
the most important thing, I would say, with football, and really with a lot of team sports, but in football in particular, you have to have good structure, right? You have to have a good foundation of what you're doing, offense or defense. It doesn't matter. So on offense, that means a stable offensive line, a plan, right? A good system with a plan going in of what you're going to execute, what you're going to do, a certain rhythm or timing to your passing game from quarterback and receivers, which has been something that we're going to talk about that's been a huge issue for the Patriots. And defensively, it's the same thing. You could have 11 of the best athletes out on defense. If they're all running around with their chickens with their heads cut off, you're going to be a bad defense. You could have 11 above average or just average NFL athletes. If they're all on a string, you're going to be a good defense.
Right.
It's structure. Okay? Go ask the Cleveland Browns.
It's the ultimate team game.
Because the Cleveland Browns have great talent on the defensive side of the ball. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Denzel Ward, Jeremiah Asa...
Jock.
J-O-K.
Yeah.
They have talent on that side of the ball. They're poorly coordinated. They run around like crazy people, right? They don't know where they're going. They don't have structure. Okay? So that's the most important thing.
Well, hang on. Let's I'm trying to find the exact quote. I can't remember what it is from the Bill Belichick Nick Saban documentary on HBO.
Yeah.
Do you remember that where Bill says something along the lines of good players can't overcome bad coaching?
Yeah, and he also said that sometimes we overcomplicate things when you lost the game because you can't tackle. Right? That was the punchline of that whole rant from the two of them, right? Sometimes we get into scheme and matchups and this and that and the other thing, and you know what, guys? I think we just didn't have a good day tackling. I think that's what it comes down to. So this is...
By the way, that was the exact quote. Good players can't overcome bad coaching.
I want to get into specific examples because I don't want to just throw this out there of Mac's not the problem and all that kind of stuff. I want to give you specific examples. And I'm not even going to give you examples.
That's what we do. That's what we do on that. We don't just spew, tape. We back it up. That's what this show is.
I don't even want to give examples. I'm going to get to the lowlights examples. I actually want to give you examples of highlights first.
Yeah.
And why these plays were made to be so difficult on the quarterback, even though it was actually a good play. So the first one I want to bring up is the seam splitter to Kendrick Bourne, where he throws the ball into the Tampa 2 defense, and it looks like he throws the ball into triple coverage, and he has to thread the needle between three guys because he had to.
Right.
The reason why is that on that play, they're running dagger, right? Dagger is just that middle read route by Kendrick Bourne, and then a dig route filling in underneath it. If you go and watch it on film, they get exactly what they want. They get Kendrick Bourne to clear out the Tampa 2, the middle of the defense, and there is a parting of the Red Seas between the numbers, right? Like literally the whole numbers are wide open in the middle of the field. The problem is that Tyquan Thornton takes his sweet time running the dig route on the dagger route. Just la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Running up the field, right? And he doesn't actually become an option on the play. So Mac Jones is reading the play, and there's only one other route backside, which is kind of not even a part of it, right? And he's waiting to read out the play, and he's like, the only way that I'm going to complete this pass right now is if I drop a dime to Kendrick Bourne on the head of the Tampa 2 defender and in between I have to throw this ball on a seed into triple coverage. Like that's the only completion on the field right now. And that's what he did. But that was made more difficult because Tyquan Thornton didn't run the route hard.
But let me just add some context to that too and what happened there. There's two big complaints I hear about Mac Jones a lot.
Yes.
He constantly throws into triple coverage, double or triple coverage, and he doesn't throw guys open.
Yeah.
Well, you can't not do both of those things. If a guy's already open, you can't throw him open. That doesn't make sense. And if you want the quarterback to throw guys open, well, then he has to throw at covered receivers. that was a great example, the play you're talking about with Kendrick Bourne, of he threw Kendrick Bourne, and Kendrick makes a great play to go up and get that ball, too. Like, that is, they made that play last year, right, against the Browns for a touchdown.
Similar play.
And I wouldn't shut up for the rest of the year. You remember this, about how that was such a high-level play, and that play was the reason I have long-term faith in all of it, right? High-level play from both of them. But also, it wasn't a fluke, because they did it last year, and they did it again.
Yeah.
So I thought that play itself, I know you're going a different direction, but I just want to throw that in as a great example of why Mac Jones isn't worth quitting on.
Yeah.
Because, and then you said, well, why doesn't he make that play more often? He hasn't had a ton of opportunities for reasons outside of his own control. I mean, look, Kendrick Bourne hasn't been on the field.
It just is not.
Right? So
it's a very low percentage throw, but the reason why he has to even attempt it in the first place is because the high percentage throw never comes to fruition.
Right.
Right? So then on the sideline catch to Kendrick Bourne, where Bourne taps his toes in, and the one that was reviewed and reversed as a catch, right?
Down the sideline, yeah.
It's 4 verts. Okay? It's literally 4 verticals. It's the simplest concept in the league. 4 verticals. And I don't want to pick on Scotty Washington too much, because Scotty Washington probably shouldn't have even been in the game, right? It's a practice squad elevation.
Right.
But he is indecisive on his route coming up the seam, so he doesn't actually threaten the half-field safety on that side of the field. It doesn't put the safety in conflict. It's supposed to 2-on-1 the safety in the deep part of the field, but it doesn't,
right?
Because Scotty Washington is not actually threatening up the seam. So the safety on that half side of the field gets to cheat to the sideline. So that's another throw that Mac Jones has to back shoulder to Kendrick Bourne to keep it away from the safety. And he has to throw it from the far hash. And Kendrick Bourne has to make a circus catch along the sideline just to get it complete. These are the little details, like the Tyquan route, the Scotty Washington route. Like, these are the little details of why this offense always looks like it's so hard for them to just complete a pass.
Right.
Okay, and this isn't even getting into first, third down of the game.
Yeah, the spacing.
The receivers collide. Or they call, they show blitz, they see it coming. Mac Jones adjusts the protection at the line of scrimmage, and Kevin Harris goes the wrong way, and it's an unblocked runner, and he's almost sacked for a safety on their own goal line. Or the play action pass that's going around Twitter, and everybody's telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Because they're right. Quarterbacks expert 679 with 3 followers. He knows football, right? Football coach. He coached his son's Pop Warner team last year, and he's telling me that Mac is late, that he's late on the throw. Don't mind you that Jacoby Myers is running an option route down the field where he can kind of break it down and break inside or out. It takes 10 minutes to run the damn route, right? And so Mac Jones is sitting there waiting. Everybody's like, he should anticipate. It's an option route. He could break in or out. If he breaks out and Mac Jones throws in, it's a pick 6 the other way.
Right.
And then we're all like, well, why did he throw the ball?
That's the play against the Jets that got called back for the roughing the passer.
It's a similar idea.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it would be the same. That's the alternative outcome.
Right. And everybody's like, oh, Mac holds the ball too long. The route needs to declare, right? Like, you need to give the quarterback a clear indication of, are you breaking in or are you breaking? Oh, Tyquan Thornton was open deep. He was open deep after Mac Jones already threw the ball.
Right.
Because the
safety declared.
Right. So this is what I'm talking about when I look at the little details of what's going on. And on that specific play action pass, Jacoby's running an option route. He has a downfield option to break in or break out based off of the cornerback's position. And that's one of those plays where ideally your quarterback's drop is set up and synced up to the fact that route's going to take a little bit longer to run.
Right.
So they run it on a 5-step drop, which is more like a bang play action, right? Hit the back foot, balls out onto a dig route, and we're off and running. I posted the exact play that they ran last year that it's supposed to look like against the Texans last year, where it's back of the foot, hits the ground for Mac Jones, Jacoby breaks in, ball's there, and we're off to the races. In this instance, he's standing there and he's patting the baby. He's holding the football like, come on, right? And then he has to throw it behind him because the safety's about to clean him out. And it's late.
Well, it's you hear the concept about like looking at backs, right? When the quarterback gets to that final step in his drop, he wants to be able to throw the ball, but you can't throw the ball for the most part. You can't throw the ball to somebody who's not looking. You might have some sort of back shoulder concept or something, but you talk about the timing and the chemistry of the offense. They're just not there right now. The guys need to be looking at Mac Jones,
right, for
him to be able to throw the ball. And this is where a lot of the Mac holds the ball talk. And Dan Orlovsky's done great breakdowns on this on Twitter.
Yeah,
when the quarterback gets to that back step of the drop, if he's looking around at his reads and all he sees are the backs of helmets, what's he supposed to do?
Right.
Right? You're just going to blind throw. That's how it turns into interceptions. So, and really what this all comes down to, and this is why this year has been so frustrating, is it is really tough to tell exactly what's wrong with this offense unless you watch it on this level.
You watch it on the film.
You can't.
And I can promise you, and I know I'm taking a lot of shots at the Twitter coaches and all that.
Yeah.
I can promise you that I can tell that you don't watch the film. I can tell.
It's like,
okay, because you're watching it on TV. He's throwing balls incomplete. He's throwing balls behind, quote unquote, behind receivers, and you're saying, it's Mac's fault. Like, what is he doing?
Right.
But you're not watching the detail of the play and seeing why it happens. The protection breaks down. Jacoby takes his time on the route. Like all these different factors of timing. And I asked Mac Jones about this yesterday, and I don't think he was necessarily throwing shade, but I'm gonna say he was for me,
okay.
Right? For me, not for him.
Throwing shade at you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Throwing shade at them, at the offense, right? When game time comes, it's got to be in rhythm. The spacing needs to be good. That's how really good offenses work.
It's not wrong.
Timing, spacing, rhythm. That's what good offenses do.
He's not wrong.
We don't have a good offense is what he's saying. We don't have spacing. We don't have timing and rhythm in the passing game. This isn't Madden. You can't just sit there and say, Y flashes open. Why isn't he throwing to Y? It doesn't work that way in real life. And again, this is not me saying that I think that Mac Jones is secretly Tom Brady and they're holding the kid back. It's me saying that I don't know what Mac Jones is because all of this stuff is holding him back so much that we can't make an evaluation on the quarterback.
So let me phrase that another way because I think this argument has maybe gotten through to some people more.
Yes.
Name a quarterback who does succeed in this situation.
Honestly, I thought about this last night because I knew that was going to sort of be the
because then that's what people say. Well,
right.
There's other quarterbacks that are in bad situations, not like this.
I don't watch enough Colts or Houston Texans film. I've seen the Colts have unfortunately been on primetime like a whole lot lately.
Yeah, we've got a whole lot of Colts this year.
And I haven't watched the Texans closely, but those statistically, it's the Patriots, it's the Colts, it's the Texans. Those are the three worst offenses in the NFL right now statistically. So I don't watch a ton of their tape, but I thought about it as well of if Joe Burrow was in this offense and you switch the quarterbacks on Sunday, like we're talking about what's wrong with Joe Burrow, right? That's that's plastered all over ESPN right now is what's wrong with Joe Burrow? Why does he look like this? 19 Brady, Rodgers at the beginning of the year this year because
Rodgers throughout the year
because there was no trust in it, right? There's no timing, there's no rhythm, there's no trust, there's no nothing that they can hang their hat on. Like that's good offense, and I find it really infuriating that obviously I find it infuriating when everybody is a genius and knows football at a high level, but that's besides the point. I find it more infuriating that people are writing Mac Jones off without the caveat of what he's playing in. Like last year with Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer. I mean, how could anybody
That's
succeed?
Probably the most comparable situation, and we all said, well, you need to see what happens when Urban Meyer isn't there.
Right. And
look at what
Doug
happened.
Peterson, who's not – I don't think Doug Peterson is like some savant. Like this is not Bill Walsh walking through the door. But he's a professional offensive coach, right?
Yeah.
He's a professional offensive coach that's done it at a high level, that's been around the block a billion times, and he knows what he's doing on that side of the ball. And look at the season that I think I saw that Trevor Lawrence has the biggest increase in passer rating from year 1 to year 2 in NFL history. all because he has some competent coaching.
Right. They really didn't even change the personnel that much.
No.
I mean, they added
Calvin Ridley's coming, but he's not on
They
this
added
team now.
Christian Kirk. That's pretty much it.
Who everybody thought they overpaid anyway.
And Evan Ingram, who I would say that's a coaching, like the way they're using him is so different than the way he was being used in New York or the way they used their tight ends last year. So it's a tough year because you want to try to explain it to people, and that's our job, right?
Yes.
But there's really there's no real way to do it without kind of sounding a little pretentious and saying
100%.
You have to watch the game. And
I understand I just sounded like a complete
shout out to the people who watch this show and listen to the show because I think they get that. I think the people who are turning into this show understand that. Sometimes you see an offense, they're not fast enough. Yeah. Oh, they're not big enough. Like, they make a lot of penalties. Like, you just see it on TV and it's easy. It's really down to a deep level where you have to go to see where this offense isn't functioning properly. And I'll say it again. People just want to say, they're just not good. What if they're just not good? They made very few personnel changes on offense in the offseason.
Right.
Very few. They changed both of their guards, right? They lost both guards, but
the line was
in one guard spot, you replaced Michael Onwenu. Michael Onwenu stepped in, who's been maybe their best offensive player this year.
Yeah.
One of the best guards in football.
Right.
He's not an issue. The other spot, you used a first-round pick to replace your other guard, which first-round pick you'd think is a plug-and-play guy. The only other real change is Devontae Parker replaced N'Keal Harry. Upgrade. They went from 6th in scoring to, I think they're 17th, 18th now. It's over a touchdown less per game.
Yeah.
So, the schedule's comparable.
Yeah.
Yes, they hung 50 on Jacksonville last year. They didn't play Jacksonville this year, but in terms of the defenses, it's pretty comparable. So what happened? It's not a talent issue. It's not. It's a schematic issue.
And I'm going to wrap it up on this, and I want to talk about one other thing on offense before we kind of open this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Mac Jones played good in this game.
Yeah.
Especially in the second half.
Well, they put his favorite receiver on the field, and suddenly he looked much better. And that's not to take it all away from Mac Jones, but can we also talk about how Kendrick Bourne played as well?
Sure. The downfield throws were great. All three of them to Kendrick Bourne were great throws.
Touchdown throw.
The touchdown throw was excellent.
Talk about chemistry, timing, rhythm.
Yeah.
Everything that play was chemistry and timing.
He read that the defender's back was to the line of scrimmage, wasn't going to make a play on the ball, put it in a spot for Kendrick Bourne. Bourne, went in and got it. Great throw, great catch.
Yeah.
Mac played fine in this game. He did. Benching him, moving on from him, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous talk. But I'm sorry.
If Mac Jones plays it, let's say next year they get the offense, they fix the things we say they need to fix.
Yeah.
Right? And Mac Jones plays at that level, and we're doing a bunch of hypotheticals. I know the team hates hypotheticals, but just humor me. Let's say they fix the things they need to fix schematically, and Mac plays at that level next year for 18 games. Does he get his fifth-year option picked up?
He should.
Yeah.
I would think he'd be a top...
Is that a guy you'd extend?
I would think he'd be a top 15, top 12 quarterback if all those things get pieced together.
If he plays at that level with the right pieces around him.
Yeah. That's what I think.
I don't disagree.
Last year he was 12 to 17 and wherever you want to put him, right? Statistically, he was
top half.
He was closer to top 15, top 12, honestly. But the other thing I want to say about the offense is that this is something that's been on my radar all year, but I think it's gotten particularly horrible, quite frankly, is the route running. I've never seen the Patriots run routes this poorly before. And since covering the team starting in 2018 and breaking down their tape and all this kind of stuff, I have never seen them look so sloppy on film running routes as they do now. Obviously, we've talked about spacing a lot. Tight ends colliding with each other, Kendrick Bourne running into Johnny Smith and getting him concussed. Like, these things are things that happen from time to time, but you don't see them happen multiple times every single week. Like, you just don't see that.
Right.
The other thing that has been driving me nuts, I mentioned it with the Myers thing and the Thornton route. Some guys just think that they have like all day to run a route. Like, they feel like they can just lollygag up the field. Like, I just don't understand.
Timing.
I don't know if it's effort. Like, I don't want to question effort. I hate doing that. But it just looks to me like they feel like, I'm going to throw 6 fakes, right? Like, I'm going to get to the top of the route and I'm going to do a bunch of jab steps, a bunch of head fakes, and like try to really get loose on this guy. And what I think it comes back to, And let's also get into the little things too, like breaking a route off at a certain yardage marker or step, right? 1 step, 3 step, 5 step, 7 step routes. Not being able to do that properly too has been a big thing. But I think what it comes down to with the timing of the routes and how long it's taking them sometimes is I really think that they're trying to do too much. Like they're trying to, and this relates back in a way to some of the miscues at the end of games that we've seen.
Yeah.
Ramondre trying to fight for extra yards. Obviously what happened at the end in Vegas. Like I think that these receivers are thinking to themselves, it's not good enough for me to just gain 8 yards on 1st and 10. I have to gain 28 yards, right? Like they're trying to create so much separation with all these head fakes and jabs and sweet releases at the line of scrimmage that take 20 minutes to get off the line because they feel like they need to make a big play every single time.
They're pressing, and when you're committing a lot of penalties and stuff like that, like this team has really struggled to incrementally work the ball down the field, right?
Right.
And when you do that, I think you kind of get in the back of your head, man, we need a big play.
Yeah.
We can't do this for 12, 13 plays. We got to get in the end zone in 6 or 7. And I think guys are playing. I think maybe there's also a level of overthinking just in terms of, and this goes back really to the coaching. When you can't get lined up, when guys don't know the play,
right?
When that keeps happening, you screw the play up 4 or 5 times. All right. I got to run this route, right? Yeah, this is my route. Yeah, okay. Yeah. This is the like. I think there's just the whole irony in this. The real irony in this is, do you remember all the way back in the summer, really in the spring, when they changed the offense, and it was, we want to simplify it. We want it to be less thinking, right? We want it to be less thinking for the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs. In the end, and I don't know if it's because they changed the offense. The two might be unrelated, but one of the big problems now, ironically, in all of this, is everybody on offense, Mac, the linemen, the skill players, it looks like they're overthinking quite a bit.
Yeah, and now what it comes down to is that it's no longer stuff like play design and sequencing and all the fancy stuff about offense. We are so far beyond that. Like,
behind that, not beyond it, behind it.
We're just, that's not the biggest issue with the team. Because they can't execute the fundamentals.
Well, so that's right? I compared it to when I was on the hub earlier this week. I compared it, everybody needs to know what the plays are, what the calls are, where to line up, right?
Right.
Once you do that, you start building on that, right? You start, then you start building off of plays, and that's like 2, 3, 4 on the checklist. They can't get past 1 right now.
Right.
You can't start doing 2, 3, 4, and 5 until 1 is checked.
And I don't know if they're capable of doing 2, 3, 4, and 5, to be honest with you. But the biggest issue that, from a coaching standpoint, I think with this team right now is the fundamental details of the game, right? Like they're not a sound football team on offense right now, where they're running precise routes and they know where they're supposed to be at, and the combinations are spaced out properly and working properly and timed up properly. Like, you can't start doing creative stuff. We can't start getting into downfield RPOs or fun things that we talk about sometimes, that I talk about, that I love, right? We can't start getting into that type of stuff if we can't run slant flat.
Well, that's what
3
I'm saying.
times in a row.
That's what I'm saying. You can't do 2, 3, 4, and 5 until that first box is checked. And I mean, to your point that they can't, there's 2 games left in the regular season. Who knows if they get any in the playoffs? That's stuff that you're trying to get checked off back in the summer. So who knows what's going to happen with that, at least in terms of this year's team. But, I think we're basically saying the same thing.
The fundamentals and the details of this football team on offense are as bad as I've ever seen it. And that, to me, is a coaching failure across the board. It's not just Matt Patricia. I'm looking at Troy Brown. I'm looking at Nick Caley. Like, these guys Judge, of course. At the very least, at the bare minimum, keeping it buttoned up, right? Like, keeping it sharp is the bare minimum on either side of the football. I could really care less at this point if you're an offensive creative genius, if you're Mike McDaniel or Kyle Shanahan or one of these guys that's motioning people and play action this way and play action that way. Like, I could care less at this point because they're not doing the simple things correct. And what I don't understand is like when Jacoby Myers takes 10 hours to come out of his route on that play action pass, it's like, I have to think Troy is in the film room and being like, hey, we gotta get out. Like, we gotta get going here.
And we know Jacoby can do it because we've seen him do it in the past.
Correct.
Right? So it's not like, oh, he just can't. Again, it goes back to my thing about the talent level.
Right.
It's not like he can't do it. I do have to take a small victory lap here, though.
Oh, boy.
Because do you remember after the Minnesota game, we were sitting here, and you were talking about Mackley didn't come back or whatever, and I said, if they just clean it all up in the margins. And you say, forget the margins, like, then he'd be able to do this and that. This is what I meant, basically. This is what I was saying. Until you have the detail, because this team has always won by playing they are better in the margins than their opponent. The little things, the details, the not making avoidable mistakes.
Right.
The Patriots won for 20-plus years by simply being better at that than any opponent they faced. They were always going to be better than the other team at that. And to your point back then, I get it. You want to be more explosive, and you need to be able to make plays, not just prevent the other team, yada, yada, yada. But until you can start doing that stuff on the margin correctly is what's going to allow you to take that next step into what you wanted to see. I still think it all comes from they have to clean up the little things first, the details.
There's so many bad habits that this team has developed in the passing game is just.
Can I give you an interesting stat? I've given you the stat off the air. I don't know that I've ever given it on the air.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot, and it I don't know exactly what it means, but it's indicative of what we're talking about.
Right.
We talk a lot about, third down struggles. Well, what's the average distance to go? This is a big Bill thing.
Yeah.
When they have a good game on third down, you ask him about it. He'll almost always say, well, we moved the ball on first and second down. It was manageable, right? So you look at, all right, they're struggling on third down. What's their average yards to go? And then maybe you take it a step deeper. All right, well, are they picking up yards on second down, right? Even if they don't get it on first, are they picking up yards on? So I'm going through and I'm tracking these numbers on Pro Football Reference. Shout out to them. Great website.
Great site.
And I'm curious. I go, all right, I wonder what their average distance to go on first down is. Like, is this something that's even tracked? Because, well, it's 1st and 10.
Right.
Right? It's 1st and 10. The Patriots' average distance to go on first down this year is 10.2 yards. That was the longest in the league, tied with a couple of teams. The Raiders have actually passed them. The Raiders are now 10.3 to go on first down.
Holding, false start.
What does that mean?
Right.
You're in a lot of 1st and 15s, 1st and 20s. But the difference is, so it's the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Seahawks. So we're all at 10.2. Now the Raiders are at 10.3. The Patriots have run about 40 less first down snaps than those other two teams, so it's on a much smaller sample size.
Yeah.
Now, not every team is 1st and 10. There's only 8 teams in the league that are averaging exactly 1st and 10.
Right.
You also have some other teams that are under.
Yeah.
The Vikings are actually the best in the league at this. The Vikings' average first down distance to go is 9.6. They're alone.
Interesting.
Which is...
I don't even know how that gets there.
Red zone.
Right.
They have... Some of it is, you get guys to jump off sides, but
line,
first and goal from the 5, first and goal from the 3.
Right.
Brings that average down.
Yeah.
So it basically just tells you but that's all on your own. The opponent doesn't have a lot to do with that number.
Right.
A lot of that is just what are you doing, right? And basically, as I'm talking through this here, what that number I think it means is the Patriots and the Seahawks and the Raiders and those other teams that are up there, they are putting themselves in difficult situations on their own accord.
Yeah. I just wonder where they go from here on the offensive side of the ball, because I think any realist would look at this situation and notice that pretty much it's not just the whole is not performing. Pretty much every position group has regressed as well, right? Like every individual.
Except Michael Onwenu.
Except Michael Onwenu.
He's been odd.
And we had Ramondre Stevenson until 2 weeks ago, right?
Look at nobody else could step up. He had to take.
Right.
9th in the league in touches.
Yeah.
I mean, he admitted after the game, this is the first time he said anything along the lines. He said he's a little banged up right now.
Yeah.
Because he's doing a ton.
Yeah. So any other people would look at this objectively and clean house on the offensive side of the ball, right? Like you bring in
coaching, not players. Coaching.
Course,
okay.
Yeah. You bring in somebody like Bill O'Brien.
Because there's people who want them to clean house in terms of players on offense.
No. You bring in somebody like Bill O'Brien and he brings all of his own coaches. Right, or something along those lines. So we'll see what ends. That's an off-season thing. I don't like playing the what if or the crystal ball game with the coaching staff, but that's our 40-minute rant on the offense. Let's take some phone calls. Patty, thanks for hanging on. I know we had you on hold for a while. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing well.
So before the Buffalo game, I had made I said the same phrase that Mac said in his press conference yesterday, which is, I just wanted to see him let it rip because that was a game that they weren't supposed to win anyway. So what would be the harm in just, seeing what you can do down the field, and I like that he said that because I would like to see them over the next couple games. And Evan, you kind of spoiled your pick on PU, but I wanted to see what you guys thought about that. Hopefully, I just want them to beat the Dolphins because the Dolphins are my NFL Yankees. I can't stand them, never have been able to stand them. And do you guys think that there's been a player, not over the course of the season, not a single game, not a Malcolm Butler, but over the course of the season that's been more sandbagged than Mac Jones this year?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Patty. And to your first question, thanks for calling. Just grip it and rip it, right? Like, in the second half, they finally opened up the passing game and he made some plays down the field. The interesting part about it is against the Dolphins. So the Dolphins, they're coordinated by Josh Boyer. He used to be here and was under Flo in Miami, and he was the one holdover. Was that they kept the continuity on defense. They brought McDaniel in to run the offense, and they kept the continuity in on defense. So they still play a lot of man coverage. They still blitz a lot, right? They don't come out you with all the amoeba all-out blitzes and stuff like that like they used to do so much with Flores, but they still play a lot of man-free, which is, 5-man rush, everybody else, one post safety in the middle of the field, man coverage, right? There's no robber, right. There's no underneath help, nothing like that because they're rushing 5. So they still play a lot of that style of coverage. So teams like the Packers last week, when they found success they attacked downfield against this team. They're okay at covering deep passes, but to shorten the intermediate stuff and the middle of the field, because they don't have any help at the intermediate middle of the field, that's really where this team is very vulnerable. So in a lot of respects, I do think they're going to come after Mac Jones. They've done that every single time they've played the Patriots in the 3 games with Mac Jones at quarterback over the last 2 years. They always come after him. I think they're going to continue to do that. And instead of, which I think is what they'll end up doing. We'll see if Marcus Jones doesn't clear protocol, then maybe not. Right. But instead of running a game plan like they did against Arizona, where there's 15 screens and draws and trying to just survive those downs where they blitz, it would be nice to see them just try to block it and let Mac Jones stand in there and make some throws down the field against it. I don't think they will, because I think that they'll be conservative again. But that. Maybe there is that potential there this week after seeing what it did last week in the second half, that they will just try to block it up and hit some throws down the field.
The one thing I'd say is if they're going to do that, Kendrick Bourne needs to be out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he needs to be out there regardless.
Right. He should be out there one way or the other. But
yeah,
I feel like every time we've done this year where he gets that little bit of run and we get all excited and this is it, here it comes, they're going to put him back in the offense.
Yeah.
And then he goes back on the shelf for 3 weeks. So
that's what I'm expecting. No, I'm just kidding. They kind of have to play him, because Devontae Parker's in concussion protocol. Yeah. Johnny Smith is in concussion protocol. I don't think either one of those guys are going to play on Sunday. So it's basically the same situation that they had last week, where you have 3 receivers healthy. You really have no choice, right?
Right.
I mean, they technically have 4, but you're not. If you're playing Kendrick Bourne over Aguilar and Tyquan Thornton at this point, then we're watching different tapes.
But
right?
But they've done that all year.
I know.
I would say.
All right. David in New York. What's going on, David? You're on the air.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
So I had a point and then a question. So my point was, I'm sure you've done this before. I went back and I looked at some of the film from the Colts game last year, the one where they were down like 20-0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like the game where I considered that's our worst. How could this offense get any worse? That's our worst offensive game. But actually looking back at it, compared to this year, that looks like at the very least a New England Patriots offense and a well-oiled machine. Granted, they were in hurry up for most of the second half of the game, but that just kind of was eye-opening to me. And then my question was, what do you want to make Teddy Bridgewater do on Sunday? Like, what do you force him to do? How do you beat him?
Yeah, good question, David. So to the first point, I have, and thanks for the call, I have reviewed that Colts tape a lot. I reviewed a lot, went back and I have, a lot of positive plays sorted on my computer. And I like to just sometimes run through last year and be like, what was working, right? Like what was that they ran well. And in that Colts game, I remember it vividly. Mac Jones hit the same concept 3 different ways. right? It was this their levels, dig levels concept, and they have the backside vertical. He hit the deep dig, then he hit the short dig, and then he hit the vertical. 3 different ways. I can't even tell you that he's hit the same play 3 different ways all year, let alone in one game, right? And that's sort of the time, like all of the things that we're saying is that they just don't run anything consistently well enough in a row to be able to do something like that. So yeah, that Colts game ended up being, if that was the film he was putting out right now, I mean, I think it's kind of similar in some ways to this last game against the Bengals, because they were bad in the first half of that game. Yeah. And they were bad the first drive of the second half. I believe it was an interception as well.
He only threw 1 pass in the first quarter.
Right. It was a bad game for them in the first half. So it's kind of similar, but it just sticks out to me that they were able to make the same play work 3 different ways, right? Like that's the old, that's the old adage in a lot of ways with football, is that it doesn't have to be super complex, right? It can be the same play. Right. The coverage adjusts and you hit it different ways. So to the second question, what do we want Teddy Bridgewater to do? Well, here is, I think, the interesting chess match about this game is that the blueprint or the book on the Miami Dolphins offense, really since that Charger game, but it maybe started a little bit with San Francisco, but they're more of a zone team, is to play man coverage. Yeah, they get into Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's faces, and a lot of the motion, play action, and misdirection that Mike McDaniel uses well is just torment zone coverage, right? Because your guys that are spot droppers are just in conflict the entire game, especially in the middle of the field. Is it a run? Is it a reverse? Is it a sweep? Is it, this guy's motioning this way and coming out that way? Now we have play action. Like, there's just the middle linebacker is got like 6 different things going on.
And Bill's talked about this, right? That against those kind of teams, play action, motion, stuff like that is a lot less effective against man coverage, because in man coverage, there's no you're not reading cues, right? You're just, this is my assignment. I'm going off this assignment. Whereas in zone, yes, then you need to be more aware of everything that's happening in front of you. Yeah. The thing I'd add to that too is and this is maybe more of a Dolphins thing than a Teddy Bridgewater specific thing, but take away the short stuff. Make him throw the ball deep.
So this is the concern, right? Because I wholeheartedly agree with you. Yeah. Especially with Bridgewater in there, because I said this on Filter, he can dink and dunk all day long. Like, that's Teddy B, right? Like, you get the ball out quickly. He averages like 6 yards, air yards per attempt. Like, that's his sweet spot. That's where he wants to be. But the problem is that if you can't man up on the outside and you're playing zone, that's what's going to be there, right? The checkdowns is what's going to be there. Right. The soft stuff underneath is what's going to be there. And I think this gets to a point that I wanted to bring up, a bigger picture point, and we were talking about this earlier, about defense nowadays in the NFL. And I think a lot of people watch that first half specifically against Burrow and are like, oh, they're just so much soft zone, right? Like, they're just sitting in soft zone. They're giving up things underneath, and Burrow's just, getting the football out quickly, distributing the ball out quickly, and it's just shredding them. And I think in a lot of ways, unfortunately, especially with the Patriots defense, the way that they're built, where they're really stronger up front and the back end is sort of the weaker part of their team, especially with all the injuries, it's just really difficult nowadays to really dictate the terms of the game on defense. Yeah. The way the rules are set up, the quarterbacks are so good, the receivers are so good. Like, you just can't control or dominate the game defensively the way that you used to be able to. And I think that a lot of teams, pretty much every team I watch on film defensively, is doing the same thing. And that is, they're playing too high shell. Sometimes they rotate it into 3. Sometimes they stay in 2. And when I say 3, I mean like cover 3 or post safety. But everybody's backing off, because all they want to do, the bend don't break, is how 32 teams are playing defense right now. But I'll say 31, because I think San Francisco might be
San Francisco, they're on a different level. But no, it's a good point. You kind of, and we talked about it before with the great, even some of the elite quarterbacks in the league right now are turnover happy. Yeah. Look at a guy like Josh Allen.
Because that's all it is that you're just trying to bait them into mistakes. You're hunting big plays.
Right. So it's, all right, let's just see if he'll throw us one. Right. And if not, we'll hold him to a field goal in the red zone. Like, that's defense at this point, right? Right. And the other thing specifically as it relates to that game, you had receivers of 6'5", 6'3", and 6'1" against corners of 5'10", 5'8", and 5'8".
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not exactly going to come up to the line and press. That's not exactly a recipe to win. And, I mean, we'll get into it more when when we get to the offseason. Jalen Mills is still here, obviously. Jack Jones is still here, but you're seeing the depth kind of be tested on the boundary corner specifically. They need more size in the secondary because receivers are getting bigger. Guys who would have been tight ends 10 years ago are now wide receivers.
Like T. Higgins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and it's if you're going to play man, and I remember talking to guys on like the 18-19 Patriots about this that had the horses to play man for 4 quarters in the secondary. If you're going to
Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, Jason McCourty, John Jones, that was what a unit.
If you are going to play man, it's a lot like basketball where you have to be able to have guys that can cover 1 through 5, right? Like you can't put a 5'8" Marcus Jones on a center like T. Higgins if you're going to live in man coverage. So you have to have bigger guys.
And that's not a knock on Marcus Jones. There's within positions, there's different types of players at each position.
Right. So it's just like a game of basketball where you match big on big and you match the guards on the guards, and like that's sort of how you have to go about it. So with that team in 18, they had John Jones in the slot, and they had Gilmore and Jason McCourty and JC who had some more size on the outside, and they were able to match up against every different body type that they were going to see. And unfortunately, this defense doesn't have that. So I actually think that what they're doing defensively, although it might be looked at as treading water on a lot of downs in a lot of situations, especially between the 20s, I think they're doing what they can, right? And this is sort of defense nowadays, like spin the dial, get you into your 2 high shell, make it a 3, make it 1, make it 2, make it 4, and just continue to spin that dial as much as you possibly can, and hope and pray that you win on 3rd down a couple times. Maybe you get a turnover or 2 or 3, and that's how you hold a team to 20 points, right? That's the end game. Right.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I mean, I think you hear sometimes people say, "Oh, they allowed 21 points, 24 points. Was it really that good of a game on defense?" But what are the stipulations? If those were long, sustained drives, right, and or not long. Sorry, not long. If those were not long, sustained drives, if you were able to keep your offense on the field, like you said, if you hold them to a field goal in the key spot, defense is so situational at this point.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily, as weird as it sounds, it's not necessarily just keep points off the board at all costs.
Yeah,
it's keep the game manageable. It set the tone. How's your team
manageable
built?
Manageable is a great way to put it. It's literally making sure that they don't score 40 on you in 3 quarters.
If your team is built for shootout offensively, then maybe you play a little more aggressive. But if you have an offense that's more dink and dunk, how can we shorten the game? How can we limit the total number of drives? Can we get red zone stops?
Right.
It's very, very situational.
All right, let's fly through some of these calls in the last 20 minutes or so we have here. Chris in Fresno, what's going on?
How's it going?
Hey.
I have a quick question for you guys. So in this scenario, obviously all the news with Derek Carr that just happened. So actually, I went to Fresno State. I go there. I've grown up watching Derek play, Davante Adams play. I know in the past I've seen reports that we've previously tried trading for Derek, and I know all the relationship with Josh McDaniels and Mac Jones. Any chance that Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels get together and trade Derek Carr and Davante Adams for Mac Jones and possibly like a 1st-round pick?
Okay, so thanks for the call, Chris. I don't mean to drop you quick. We just have to go here.
Yeah.
This one, I would love to have Davante Adams here.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that the only way I can get Davante Adams, but I have Davante Adams, is to take on Derek Carr, then I'll swallow the pill, but I don't like swallowing it.
Yeah, it's the first time I've heard that one phrased that way, which I'm a little more interested.
So the Derek Carr thing to me is baffling because Mac Jones is just a cheaper version of Derek Carr.
Right.
So why are you trading the same player, Mac Jones, for Derek Carr just to pay with money?
Right.
Pay the more expensive quarterback and the older quarterback.
Yeah, and you get him off the rookie deal. It's crazy to me how 3 weeks ago I'm sitting here hyping up the defense for how they played against the Raiders, and all I hear is Derek Carr's terrible. Derek Carr doesn't belong in the league.
Available.
Derek Carr this, Derek Carr that. Now all of a sudden, could you imagine if they had Derek Carr instead of Mac Jones?
Same quarterback.
Look,
it's the Spider-Man meme. It's like, this is the same people.
I don't think he's as bad. That game against the Patriots, one of the worst I've seen him play. I don't think he's quite that bad, but everybody talking about, oh, well, Mac's panicky in the pocket, and Mac has trouble getting through his reads, which, like, I don't think is as true as people make it. But if those are your complaints, those are also two of the biggest knocks on Derek Carr.
Yeah.
If you want to say you want a different quarterback, fine. Come to the table with an intelligent argument. This is going to be my new thing, okay? I'm saying this right now. If you're going to tell me Mac shouldn't be the Patriots quarterback, if you're going to tell me Mac shouldn't be the Patriots quarterback, well, then who should?
Yeah.
That's going to be my question. You don't move on from a guy who a year ago took the team to the playoffs as a rookie. You don't move on from a guy like that just because, greener pastures, right? You move on from a guy like that with a plan. And if Derek Carr is your plan, you're spinning your tires. At best, you're spinning your tires.
I blame Josh Allen for this.
I do too. I blame Josh Allen for a lot.
I blame Josh Allen. I blame Mahomes. I blame Herbert, because it has set an expectation that every quarterback not only has to be this like cyborg with a rocket arm, but he also has to play that style to win, right? Where this backyard, gunslinger style that they all play. And Herbert, maybe not as much as Allen and Mahomes, but just because of the offense that he's in. But in general, like that, it's death to the traditional pocket passer, right? Like, and then this is like from
which
an aesthetic
I think is
perspective.
So dumb. Because you can still, at the end of the day, football's still football.
Yeah,
and
aesthetically, when you see, Josh Allen make a throw with like a guy hanging off of him, and he's got he's throwing it with one arm, no feet, nothing, right? Like, and he's just throwing off platform. It looks so cool. It does.
But what people don't realize is how slim the margin of error is to operate that way, and
I just don't understand
Josh Allen's success. What the people who don't get enough credit is everybody else on that roster who allows him to operate that way. Stephon Diggs being an excellent receiver.
No, but here's my point.
Listen. Here's my point. Here's my point, because it goes to what you're saying.
Yeah.
To have a quarterback that Mahomes is the one difference in this. I think Mahomes is on another planet.
Yeah.
But whether it's Allen, whether it's Mahomes, whether it's Aaron Rodgers in the latter stage of his career.
Right.
You have to have such a good roster around that guy to allow him to play that way, to allow him to play up to his skill set. So if you have to build an elite roster anyway, why give up all those assets to go chase the QB when it's been proven that you can win with that elite roster, even if your quarterback isn't that good?
Well, we have Spee on hold, so he's gonna.
Oh boy!
So
let me just say
we're getting to this argument here in a second.
Brock Purdy exists.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy exists.
You have Kyle Shanahan running the offense, but I think that the Derek Carr thing, the fact that this is a conversation to trade the younger Derek Carr, the cheaper rookie contract Derek Carr for $30 million a year, Derek Carr, is just mind blowing.
And if you think if you don't think Derek Carr has been good in Vegas, which I know a lot of Patriots fans don't, based on the way they talked after that game, what does bringing him into a worse situation do for you?
I don't know.
If you want to replace Mac Jones, fine. Come to the table with a better option.
All right. In North Carolina. How's it going? You're on the air. Hello.
Hey.
Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing?
Long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a remark about the season, as it's been fascinating, actually, from like an academic standpoint. Because if you think back to preseason, we all wondered how we would be able to tell if it was the offensive coaching or the players, and I think that's gotten really murky. And I believe it started with just the play calling was the problem. We weren't utilizing certain tools in the bag like RPOs, play action, and then to look at where it's at now and sort of evolved to this. Well, the positional coaching is terrible as well, or at least lackluster.
Yeah, that's.
I just think it's fascinating and worthy of like a retrospect at some point.
That's totally 100% the 180 that I did, because I started with this offense and was like, well, they're just not creative. They're not calling the right plays. They don't call enough play action. They don't call enough RPO. But now we're so far removed from even that part of the discussion, because now we just need to execute just day one.
Can you get lined up? Right. Can you get lined up? Right. And maybe I misunderstood the call. Yeah, thanks for the call. Maybe I misunderstood a little bit. I don't think it's murky in terms, like, it sounded like he was saying, well, do they not have enough talent, or are they not coached right? I don't think that part's murky at all.
Yeah.
And we already got into that about the offensive ranking from last year. I won't redo that, but I don't think it's murky there.
All right, here it comes.
All right.
Spee, how we doing?
Oh, my God. I didn't even want to get into that stuff, Alex, but, I mean,
good.
Just stop using the word proved. You know, it hasn't been proven yet. I mean, call me when that kind of situation, high-ranking, sort of high-flying talent with your net neutral quarterback has won a Super Bowl. It hasn't happened. But, I didn't want to get into that.
All right.
All
right. But Nick Foles did happen, Spee.
Nick Foles happened. I would say enough guys have gotten.
Oh my gosh, he was in for one game.
All right, so Carson Wentz.
He was.
So Nick Foles and Carson Wentz happened. It's two of them.
Spee, Nick Foles was the quarterback for the entire playoff run. It wasn't just one game. We're just messing with you, Spee. What do you?
Okay, fine. But Carson Wentz that season was a very pre-injury. Carson Wentz was en route to being a very, very
because he's in a great situation. Honestly, on a great roster.
Spee, I say this to Alex all the time, and I think it's hilarious. If Jimmy Garoppolo hits that throw at the end of that Super Bowl and wins that, then his whole argument is so much stronger. His whole argument is so much stronger.
Only Shanahan didn't put it in his hands.
Okay, fine. You want to talk about, let me bring up Jimmy Garoppolo. Just what if those two teams play 10 times, Jimmy Garoppolo loses 8 out of 10 of those games for them.
Well, he did lose.
Because that team was so heavily dependent on the running game until they get to the postseason. They're like, all right, Jimmy, sling it. And look what happened.
Well, not in the NFC Championship game. He threw it 8 times.
Threw 8 times. But you're proving my point. If you just had a bet, like it could have worked if they just coached it better.
Oh, please.
All right, what was your point? What
did you actually call in for?
I really didn't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that Evan, you and I, through different roads to Grandma's house, have come to kind of feel the same way about Mac Jones at this point. I feel uncertain. I feel like the needle for me is not moved adequately because of the situation, because of everything you guys like to harp on. I think that Alex is still too much of a is too much of a Mac apologist at this point. And I don't really think he sees him clearly for his warts. But what I wanted to get you guys to address, and what I'm genuinely curious, and I'm not coming at this with a this is right, this is wrong. To please avoid using the words rookie wall. Just tell me what Mac is in total. Look at the whole body of work from the post-bye Indy game last year forward. Because I don't think he was that great toward the end of the season last year. So please, I genuinely want to hear what you guys think about his play since the Indy game on.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. I think a lot of people bring up Spee, and thanks for the call, and we always appreciate the back and forth. I think the reason why the reason why I give him a little bit of a pass for what happened at the end of last year is not necessarily a rookie wall. It's just more that offense had hit its ceiling, and they still weren't 100% personnel-wise in a spot where they were going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Buffalo, for example, right? So what I was really hanging my hat on with that was that, okay, this is the baseline, right? This is the floor for Mac Jones, and that floor is a good enough, capable NFL starter. And now let's see if they go out and add somebody more than Devontae Parker, and they build off of what they did offensively. And Josh McDaniels doesn't leave for Vegas, and they really grow moving forward. Then, hopefully they finish stronger in the future. And of course, what we have is what Spee was, saying. What we've been saying this whole time is a whole lot of nothing because we have no idea what we have. And that part is scary and frustrating all at the same time. But I think the last, let's call it 5 or 6 games of last season, I don't think he played particularly well. But I think that on the whole, he still played well enough for me to be optimistic that if we keep building with this, it's going to turn out to be okay. But we just never got to build with it, and that's the disappointing part.
There's a lot of rookie quarterbacks that come into the league that just can't win. Period. Yeah. Right, there's one a little bit south of here wearing green. I think that
somebody emailed in about that.
Mac Jones was winning you the games he should have won you.
Yeah,
which I know that doesn't sound like a lot
for a rookie. It's
for a
decent.
Rookie quarterback, that's a good baseline.
Right,
and outside of maybe that Colts game, I don't know that any of those losses were games the Patriots necessarily should have won for reasons beyond Mac Jones. Ideally, the quarterback becomes a guy who maybe wins you some games you shouldn't, and eventually starts turning those games into games you should win. And what I saw in that first year as a whole, like you said, even though he didn't play as well down the stretch, I didn't think he played overly poorly. It was nowhere close to what it looks like this year. I thought there's enough to build on here that in a year, I think he does start to win some of those games, and then in 2 or 3 years, some of those games start to flip. That's how rookie quarterback development generally works. Like you said, unfortunately, the building on it never came because Josh McDaniels left and yada, yada, yada. The rest is history. That's what I saw from Mac Jones. I saw a guy who could at least win you the games you needed to win. And, all right, if he's doing that in year 1, where does it go in year 2? Where does it go in year 3? That's what was exciting. Year 2 now has kind of just been thrown away, and it's, well, now he has to get back to year 1, and you're restarting, and it's just the timeline is totally thrown to the wind, and it's pretty much uncharted territory at this point. Again, the regression from year 1 to year 2 for Mac Jones, there really is no comp that you can look at and say, well, all right, this guy got his team to playoffs in year 1, completely fell off in year 2. Like, that hasn't happened. Yeah. Quarterback growth or regression is generally pretty linear. And this is just a roller coaster.
Right. And that's the part that frustrates me the most, is that this is such a lost season.
Right.
From
that's what
an
evaluation comes down
standpoint. And to that end, not only have the Patriots potentially ruined, quite frankly, Mac Jones.
Yeah,
ruined him.
Look, there's a chance that he never gets back to where he was at year 1 because the fundamentals, the confidence, all of it is just so shot from this year.
Not only did they ruin him, but they stunted him. Most importantly,
I would say it's one and the same, but yeah.
But the problem is that at the end of last year, I thought that they had a guy that was worth building with. I wasn't 100% sure that he was going to be an elite quarterback or a perennial all-pro or anything like that. But I thought that they had a guy that it was worth giving a shot to, right, to get to that point for 2, 3, 4 years. Now it feels like we've skipped over this year, and now we're back to not square one in terms of like week 1, 2021, but just square one.
I think
of
we kind of are.
Chance.
I think you're kind of, the conversation for Mac Jones heading into 2023 is going to be similar to the conversation you'd have about a rookie. Yeah, I actually think it is. What exactly is he? Because the 2 seasons we have are so vastly different. Yeah. That I think I like that take that you're kind of back. Mac Jones heading into 2023, I think will be viewed much like a rookie quarterback would be. Does he belong in this league? What exactly does he give you? And those are all fair questions. Right. Some of that's on him. Some of that is reasons beyond his control. But he's basically back to his rookie year at this point. Right.
All I've ever asked for out of this situation is that we just put Mac Jones in a solid foundation like he was in last year. And now in year 3, even though maybe mentally and some of the fundamentals have regressed because of what's gone on this year, it should, in theory, be another offseason with Tom House, another offseason in an NFL strength and conditioning program. Like, we should still be making progress physically from that standpoint.
But I would even say
maybe we could see another step from him, and that we obviously didn't get to see this year.
At the very least, next year we get our answer, right? Exactly. If you put him in a better situation, at the very least, it's like, all right, if they have a real OC in place and the offensive line's fixed and he's still struggling, well, then he's not the guy, and that could happen. But if they bring in Bill O'Brien and they get the tackle situation figured out. Maybe they bring in a receiver. Right. And they go back to averaging 30 points a game like they did last year. Well, okay, now we're in business. And then it becomes, well, you still burned a year, but all right, no, he is the guy. 2022 is the anomaly.
The rookie contract, too. Which is
on a right, yeah. But
okay, so really quickly before we sign off here, your 2-minute take on Sunday. We've talked a little bit about the Dolphins, but I want to kind of hammer this home.
I mean, you said this to me at practice, and it was something I was thinking a couple days ago. It reminds me a lot of that Bills playoff game last year in the sense that they had, Devontae Bosby out there at coverage. Jawan Williams just they didn't have any depth. Jalen Mills had COVID. John Jones was sick.
Yeah. J.C. Jackson played, but he was 1 foot out the door by that point.
He was also hurt, I think. Yeah. They didn't have anybody in the secondary. Everybody was sick or hurt or whatever.
Jonathan Jones was inactive because he was hurt. He was on injury.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. So, Marcus Jones hasn't practiced this week. Jack Jones hasn't practiced in a couple weeks. Jalen Mills hasn't practiced in a couple weeks. Jonathan Jones, I believe, is still on the injury report, although he's practicing. So who are you putting out there against if they're, one of the top 3 skill position groups in the league, I would say? Yeah. It's just, whether it's Miles Bryant or, you're deep on the depth chart now, a banged-up John Jones, getting into the practice squad, Quandre Mosley. You're asking a lot of guys that you really weren't planning on putting on the field this year, putting on the field in very different roles. It's going to be a tall task, even without Tua, to keep up with these receivers. If they can do it, look, Miami hasn't played great football lately. Their defense has been inconsistent. Their offense, even beyond Tua, has been turnover prone, so you have a chance to hang with it. If they were healthy at corner, I think the Patriots have a good shot in this game.
Yeah.
That's a lot of injuries to overcome in the secondary.
Yeah, I never really gave them a shot in that playoff game last year anyways, just because of how it looked a couple weeks earlier, and that team really felt like it was sort of letting go of the rope down the stretch. But I think that this team, I really thought maybe they had a chance in this game. I can't figure out how they defend this offense, even with Teddy Bridgewater. And what my guess is, and this goes back, over to the other side of the football. What my guess is that they're going to defensively do what we were just talking about, which they did a lot against the Bengals, which they did a lot against the Bills, and they're just going to sit in soft zone and survive, right? And hopefully they can keep the game. They can shorten it, right? And, they gave up 22 points to Cincinnati. They gave up, 24 ultimately, right, to Buffalo, even though it was not kind of like a fake 24. They gave up 24. Like, that's the type of game that you need to play. But in order to win that game, your offense actually has to do something.
Right.
So this is no longer, I thought going into this game that this could be a game that the Patriots defense actually controlled a game and really put them in a position to win. Now I'm not really sure if we can kind of get to that point anyway at this point. So this is just don't get, don't give up 35 to Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah. Right. Keep him in the 20s. And then offensively, you got to do something.
Kendrick Bourne. That's what you got to do. Get the ball to Kendrick Bourne. Keep him on the field because you can move the ball and you can score points when he's on the field.
Okay. We have one more caller. Just called in. All right. And then we're going to wrap. John. What's up, John?
Hey, guys. I was wondering, what is your dream off-season plan for the Patriots at tackle, wide receiver, and offensive coordinator?
Okay, so this is thanks for the call, John.
John knows I put together my 10-point plan for the Patriots offseason.
Yeah, we're not doing 10 points, Alex. Okay, we don't have time for that. But give me your dream offensive coordinator, dream tackle, dream receiver. Quickly, go.
So
not 10 points.
All right. If we're being realistic,
yes,
it probably is Bill O'Brien. I'm assuming Josh McDaniels is staying in Vegas. I'd love to get Josh back. If not him, give me Bill O'Brien, wide receiver. I've been on the record with this. DeAndre Hopkins. I think there's a chance he's available. I think there's a chance he's gettable at a relatively good price.
Is he gonna let bygones be bygones with Billy O?
Oh, I forgot about that. All right. Yeah. You know what? We said dream offseason. Yes, they bury the hatchet. If I had to pick one,
Bill puts him in a room at the ground round, just like he did with Rodney Harrison.
If I had to pick one, I would say Hopkins. So fine. Chad O'Shea as your OC. So you can get DeAndre Hopkins to come here and play wide receiver. And then a tackle, I actually think I'd love to see him add two tackles because Wynn's out, Trent's on a contract here. I think it's a classic sign one, draft one. I don't have the list of the top tackles in front of me, but sign one of the top tackles in free agency, and then use that first-round pick on another tackle.
So I'm not too far off from you.
I'll say for the sake of argument, Broderick Jones is the tackle in the draft I'd like to have.
Yeah, so Bill O'Brien, number one.
Yeah.
I know you're not going to like this, but Cliff Kingsbury, number two.
Okay.
If Cliff gets fired by Arizona and you can't make Bob happen, then I'd bring him back.
Okay. But then you probably can't get Hopkins.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues there with Hopkins, right? So I can't really get too caught up on the wide receiver.
You don't want Hopkins as much as I do, though. I know
the wide receiver one is difficult for me right now because I think Hopkins is really the obvious one that would be available, but getting him is politically is a little bit difficult.
Who would you rather have, O'Brien or Hopkins?
I said yesterday when you asked me this question off the air that I'd take Bill O'Brien because I think that they're just so sloppy structurally, right? Like as an offense that I think that fixes it more. Like if you give Matt Patricia DeAndre Hopkins, is it going to be any better?
I'll say that
it's not any better.
But it's not. But it's not O'Brien or Hopkins. It's another any OC you want besides O'Brien,
right?
And Hopkins.
Maybe Hopkins and Cliff actually really like each other.
Maybe they do. So if it's Hopkins and Cliff, who would you rather have then?
Hopkins and Cliff.
Okay,
because I don't think that Cliff is a drop off from.
So
Bill O'Brien.
It's not Hopkins and you keep Patricia. It's Hopkins and just not Bill O'Brien. It can be whoever you want, just not Bill O'Brien.
It's a mystery box.
The other thing I'd say when you talk about the sloppiness, go back and watch some of Alabama. Alabama had a lot of the same issues this year in terms of
a pro.
What?
I think he's a pro.
Alabama
pro
had a
coach.
lot of the same issues this year in terms of the nuts and bolts that the Patriots did.
But was that because it's college kids versus NFL players?
But they haven't had those problems in the past. It's always been college kids in the past.
They didn't have that problem last year with Billy O either.
Fair.
Right?
That's fair.
Okay. OT. So I've really been. I'm
Wait, hang on. If not Hopkins, who?
I don't know.
Judy?
I guess. I mean, I really like T.
Higgins.
But I don't know if he's going to demand a trade like
Ayuk?
that, really. I think Ayuk is one of those guys that you kind of have to know how to use, and I'm not confident in that. Yeah.
So it sounds like Judy, if not Hopkins.
Yeah, I'd go Higgins if they can get their hands on him.
So Higgins over Judy.
There's a big bill coming for Cincinnati, right?
Oh, yeah.
Joe Burrow is going to be a $40-50 million and that's not an organization. Now we're getting down the rabbit hole here, but that's not an organization that is flushed with cash,
right?
Like that's not a big pocket owner and not a big pocket market. So at some point in time, you have to think about that in Cincinnati. So I'd like T. Higgins as well. Offensive line. All for drafting a tackle in the first round, especially if they don't make the playoffs and they have a top, 10. They're probably going to be in that 10 to 15 range. You can really get a franchise guy at that spot.
And this is a really good. I think you can get a franchise tackle in the 20s in this class. This is a really good tackle class.
Yeah,
it is not a great wide receiver class.
No, it's not. So the other guy that I'd throw out there, because I'm with you, sign one and
draft one.
Yeah, 100%. You have the cap space to maybe go out and get one of the bigger name tackles in the market.
They don't. Sorry to cut you off. They don't have a ton of big name pending free agents. So
John Jones is pretty much it.
John Jones and Devin, if he wants to come back.
But Devin's coming back one way. He's only coming here, right? So there's not.
But I'm just saying,
market there.
They have all that caps. It's not one of those things where they have a lot of cap space, but everybody's up and you have to re-sign people. They have a lot of cap space, and they really don't need to spend a lot of it in house.
And they can also free up some space with moves. Anyways, I'm getting more and more married to the idea of Mike McGlinchey, because I'll lay it out really quickly. Right tackle, first of all, so checks that box, right? And then you draft, obviously, the higher premium position at left tackle.
And most of the guys in the draft are primary left tackles.
Right tackle, 6'8", 320 right tackle.
Love it.
Love power blocking, downhill type of guy, which hopefully they'll get back to that system. The third thing, number 9 overall pick in the draft a couple years ago. They love that, right? That's Stephon Gilmore. Right, it's the guy that they couldn't get their hands on because he was too high up in the draft for them. He has all the raw tools and ability, like ball of clay type of guy. He hasn't been lights out necessarily for San Francisco, but I don't like the system that he's in, because in San Francisco, you got to be able to move your feet. It's an outside zone scheme. It's a bootleg scheme. Like, there's a lot of moving pockets. There's a lot of linear movement for the offensive line. Like, when you're 6'8", 330, you just want to come off the ball, right? Like, you don't want to be stepping out and getting out.
Was he drafted by Shanahan?
That might have been the regime right before Shanahan. Okay. I don't know, but Notre Dame guy.
Yeah.
I really like McGlinchey, especially because, Elgin Jenkins just signed an extension. Conklin in Cleveland just signed an extension. So some of the other guys are starting to, that are at the top of the tackle market are signing extensions, and McGlinchey's going to hit unrestricted free agency. So that would be my plan. We'll definitely outline the plan. Believe it or not, we might only have one more in-season show.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely outline the plan more on the first off-season show, whenever that is. And so we'll definitely have a more fleshed out, detailed show on that. But we'll be back next Thursday, hopefully next Thursday again on the video show for you YouTube fans. And we'll be back for next week in Buffalo, and hopefully a meaningful game in Buffalo. So thanks so much for watching. I can say that this time, and listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.